Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Well, good evening, friends, and welcome to this March 23rd, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Turkish armed forces have shot down a Syrian military jet which had violated its airspace, according to the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan. James Reynolds opens tonight with that report.
Every day these P-3 Orions, a design dating back 50 years, leave a small airbase on the western edge of Australia, heading out to join the search. And more keep arriving. These are from Japan. China too is sending substantial forces. These Ilyushin jets are already in Australia, and more will follow.
Well, friends, it seems we can't get away from that missing Malaysian flight, which still missing. We'll come back to that story a little bit later. I want to go first, though, to this report out of Syria about the plane that was shot down there.
These pictures, filmed from Turkey's border with Syria, are said to show where the Syrian warplane came down. We can't verify the footage independently.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
And these pictures, apparently of the same event, were filmed inside Syria and posted online by activists. Turkey's Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan told a rally in Istanbul that the Syrian plane was shot down after it violated Turkish airspace.
I congratulate firstly our Chief of General Staff and our pilots. I congratulate our Air Force. If you violate our border, our slap will be hard.
In recent days, the Syrian government has been fighting rebel forces for control of crossings and checkpoints in the northwest of the country. Turkey supports the rebels, but it's worried about the conflict further spilling onto its own territory. This country now hosts more than 500,000 Syrian refugees. Many live in camps and villages next to the border. Turkey's neighbours' war has already had a serious impact. James Reynolds, BBC News, Istanbul.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reynolds, James. And friends, we go next to a story related to the Ukraine. Russian troops have stormed a military base in Crimea, seizing it from Ukrainian control. Ian Pennell was inside the Belbek base as the Russian troops and militias moved in.
Limbering up for a fight as the menacing force of the local militia arrives at the gates. They try to persuade the Ukrainian troops holed up here to leave. But the Ukrainian soldier says they'll stay to the end to defend their commander's honor. The colonel's a dejected man. He's been waiting for 23 days to be given orders to pull out his troops, but they never came.
Can you really defend yourselves?
I hope so, he says. He accuses the Russians of behaving like fascists. The militias have used persuasion, threats and violence in the past. Today they promise to be peaceful.
No fighting, no arms, no. We are for peace. Only peace, only peace. It's our brothers.
It wasn't peaceful at all. Heavily armoured Russian forces stormed the base. Reporters were forced to the ground, footage confiscated. These are pictures Moscow doesn't want you to see.
Well, as you can see, Russian forces with armoured vehicles have now broken into the compound. They've come through at two different points as the so-called self-defence forces on the other side are massing near the gate.
It's the first time we've seen Russian troops in action in this conflict. A message to Ukraine and the outside world with a show of brute force. Remarkably, there was only one minor injury. Outmanned and outgunned, the Ukrainian troops had no response but to surrender. They've been taunted, isolated, and finally humiliated. As Russia took control of the base, they sang their national anthem. Fatefully titled, Ukraine Isn't Dead Yet. But in Crimea it seems that way.
Well, friends, Moscow's ambassador to the EU has said that nobody has anything to fear from Russia and that the country does not have any expansionist views. Speaking on the Andrew Marr show, Volodymyr Chizhov maintained that there was no intention for Russian troops to march into Ukrainian territory outside Crimea, and described Western economic sanctions on Russia as irrational.
Nobody has anything to fear from Russia. Nobody in this world.
What about the measures that have been agreed in the EU? Are you concerned about the measures against individual Russians and the Rosaia Bank? Is this something that's going to cause consternation in Moscow?
I certainly don't think so. I believe these measures are, well, shall I say, irrational, to be politically correct. And of course, they are politically motivated.
But there's more to come, we're told. There's going to be further economic measures as well.
We're not afraid.
Well, you have a lot of dependence on selling gas to the European Union countries, particularly to Germany and Italy. If those contracts were threatened long term, that would be very serious for Russia, wouldn't it?
It would be equally serious for those countries. But overall, let's face it, we're living in the 21st century in a globalized economy. So I think today everybody is everybody's partner in this global world of ours.
Could you give me a very straightforward commitment that there will be no incursions of Russian troops onto Ukrainian territory outside the Crimea?
There is no intention of the Russian Federation to do anything like that.
That's not quite a commitment, if I may say so, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I'm not the commander-in-chief.
You're not, but you do speak for the Russian government. That's as far as you can go. There's no intention, but you can't completely rule it out.
Well, the situation in Ukraine is, of course, a source of concern to everybody, including Russia. And we certainly hope to see it settled by peaceful means, taking into account the legitimate interests of all the people living in Ukraine, of all the ethnic groups, of all the regions of Ukraine, and we're ready to help.
Well, friends, on that story, the situation in Ukraine has a tremendous potential for escalation of events in the world. We'll be saying more on that this week. Related now to the missing Malaysian flight MH370. An Asian newspaper, the Asia Pacific, in its edition yesterday, March 22, in the headline that reads, "A routine flight till both routine and flights vanish." And the article reports what has become perhaps the most perplexing case in modern aviation, one that investigators say may take years to solve or could remain a mystery forever. Or as one of my good friends from Ambassador College wrote me and said, could remain a mystery until Jesus Christ returns. More than 2 weeks after Flight 370 disappeared, unbridled speculation surrounds the unfolding global drama, says Asian Pacific's article in yesterday's paper, the Asian Pacific. It goes on to say, so much is uncertain about what happened on the plane, and so much of what has been disclosed by Malaysian authorities has been contradicted, that hardly any theory of its fate can be easily dismissed. Yesterday, the authorities said a Chinese satellite had made a new sighting of a possible object floating in the southern Indian Ocean in the area that is now the focus of the search, and China was sending ships to investigate.
Every day these P-3 Orions, a design dating back 50 years, leave a small airbase on the western edge of Australia, heading out to join the search. And more keep arriving. These are from Japan. China too is sending substantial forces. These Ilyushin jets are already in Australia, and more will follow. All this to maximise the chance of locating possible debris that's already been seen in satellite images.
We have now had a number of very credible leads, and there is increasing hope, no more than hope, that we might be on the road to discovering what did happen to this ill-fated aircraft.
Satellite information gleaned from bursts sent for hours after flight MH370's last radio contact makes experts think it ended up in this area, 14,000 square miles of the inhospitable southern Indian Ocean, some 1,500 miles from Perth. American and Chinese satellites have spotted what could be sections of the plane. We're still awaiting details of the new sighting. The only way to confirm this is to find it. That's what this New Zealand Air Force P-3 is trying to do. The plane is bristling with high-tech surveillance equipment, but this kind of searching relies on something more basic, the human eye.
We've been flying for just over 3 hours now, and the plane will shortly descend to just a few hundred feet above the sea. The crew behind me will then move to the windows and start looking out as the aircraft zigzags backwards and forwards across some of the most remote patches of ocean you can find anywhere on this planet.
We drop down to just above the sea, and the crew concentrates at the windows, looking for anything out of the ordinary amid the waves.
It's very tough. You're travelling in an aircraft that's doing 200 miles an hour, and you could be as low as 250, 200 feet above the water, so the world is whistling past you and you're looking for an object in amongst the white caps of the waves.
The families of those on board the ill-fated flight, of course, have an urgent need to know what happened. Somewhere out in the Indian Ocean is the answer to this extraordinary mystery. But in all this vastness, it may never be found. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Perth, West Australia.
Thank you, Jonathan. And friends, my friend who sent me the Asia Pacific article that I read a couple of lines from for you is from the state of Washington, where at least 3 people have been killed and several badly injured in a huge landslide in a rural area of northwestern American state of Washington. Victoria Sill reports.
This is the aftermath of a deadly landslide that completely blocked a rural state route near the town of Osso, just north of Seattle on Saturday. Over 1.5 kilometres long, mud, trees, rocks and other debris were carried along by the mud flow. Snohomish County Sheriff's Office have confirmed the deaths. They say at least 6 homes have been destroyed. Some drivers had a lucky escape.
The darkness. I just saw the darkness. That's all I could see. Everything from one side, completely in the other side.
Dozens of search teams have been sifting through the debris looking for anyone who might be trapped.
Okay, and that's the news we have up to the moment on that. I do have a few additional head notes that have come in related to that story. The landslide destroyed 6 houses and covered a road near the town of Osso, about 90 kilometers, 55 miles north of Seattle. It was at least 41 meters, 135 feet wide, and 54 meters deep. That'd be about 175 feet deep, according to local authorities. And the mudslide aftermath pictures were courtesy of Paula Falcao. Friends, I gave you a report last night without video related to the Pope Francis denouncing evil, blood-stained mafia. And I've got some video on that for you tonight. Let's take a look real quickly, though, at our chart from Revelation 6. You'll notice the first seal has a white column where it says white. And the book of Revelation, Revelation 6, depicts the first seal of the 6 seals of Revelation as a white horse, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as religious deception. And I'll have a story for you, I hope, by tomorrow evening, friends, that one of my friends emailed me, and I need to have a little time to check it out, but someone in the Catholic Church is saying something about the Pope that I think you'll find very interesting. But Pope Francis has, in today's news, video out of today and yesterday's news, Pope Francis has launched a stinging attack on the mafia, warning gangsters that they'll go to hell unless they repent and stop doing evil. Well, you know, the ultimate end of anyone who doesn't repent is a lake of fire, as the Bible puts it. But the Pope is saying they'll go to hell, blood-stained money, blood-stained power. You can't bring it with you to your next life. Repent, says the Pope, as he spoke at a prayer vigil for relatives of those killed by the mafia. Marika Oy has this report.
Stop doing evil or prepare for hell. That was the message from Pope Francis. The church filled with those who have suffered at the hands of the mafia.
Giovanni Falcone.
The Pope listened as the names of those murdered were read out. He then delivered this condemnation.
The power, the money that you have now coming from so many dirty businesses, so many mafiosi crimes, it's blood-stained money, blood-stained power. You can't bring it with you to your next life. Repent. There's still time to not end up in hell, which is what awaits you if you continue on this path.
There are 4 main groups of mafia in Italy, with 25,000 members and 250,000 affiliates worldwide. And the blood-stained money, as the Pope called it, is huge. The United Nations estimates that they have a joint annual turnover of more than $160 billion. They're involved in everything from drug trafficking, illegal gambling, counterfeiting and murders. The church has been accused of not doing enough to confront the gangsters in the past. But the anti-mafia activists hope that the Pope's words are a signal that he is with them in their fight. Marie Coy, BBC News.
And friends, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, do you know where your president and the First Lady is tonight? Well, Michelle Obama and her daughters have visited the Great Wall of China on the 4th day of their week-long visit to the country. Mrs. Obama is using the visit to highlight what she says is the power and importance of education. Friend, that's it for our report this Sunday night, March 23rd. God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Monday evening, with the current day's news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying, good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.